everybody. Hope everybody is doing well this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Just wanted to bring a devotion to us this afternoon and this evening in relation to God's Word. And I'm going to find my place in Exodus chapter 18 verses 13 through 23. And if you don't know this passage of Scripture, in essence what we're looking at and kind of thinking through is as the children of Israel are leaving, they've departed from Egypt and everything, they're beginning to head out into the wilderness towards Mount Sinai and everything. And in essence, of course we know that God has called Moses to be the leader of the children of Israel, and they're making their way out into the desert and everything else. And all of a sudden Moses finds a very hard place in life to where he is, if you don't know this or not, there's roughly about 2 million people that are with the children of Israel right now, is the people that he's leading out. So imagine leading 2 million people nevertheless, but for him, he's kind of got his daily routine structured and set up that, in essence, if there's a problem, if there are things going on found within the life of the Israelites, they're bringing it to him, and he's kind of the one that's trying to figure out how to navigate everything. And so tonight's advice is basically, if I had a title or a point to go after, it'd be advice for the ages, okay? I don't know if you've ever needed advice, or maybe you were given it and you weren't even looking for it. I don't know if that's the case, but, it kind of comes in both ways, right? But a long time ago, being a new pastor in the ministry and everything, I had a friend of mine that just, he told me, he said, "Casey, remember that every hill is not worth dying on." And at the time, it was just like, I don't even know what that means. 14 years later, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. So, that's advice that I wasn't necessarily looking for then, but it makes sense now. It's applicable now. I've had other people that give advice about mentoring and what it means to, to know when to talk, when to be quiet, all of these different things. But, advice is something that is absolutely wonderful and beautiful, because it is an impartation of wisdom that begins to, be imputed within our hearts and our lives. Things that we can, hold on to, things that hopefully whenever we need them begin to come out, in terms of our mental focus. But, Moses is definitely kind of into that very boat of where, like I said, he's leading 2 million people, and as a result, there's constantly people, Moses this, Moses that, we need help with this, we need help with that, we need you to decide this. And so he's constantly just every day being bombarded. Well, Moses' wife, her father, you may know him, his name is Jethro. You find the story here in Exodus 18. But Jethro begins to observe as kind of an older man, and he sees the conundrum to which Moses is under, that, just day after day, moment after moment, people are just one thing, one problem, one issue, one thing right after another, after another, after another, and he sees that it's wearing Moses down. And so in terms of our passage this evening, I just want to encourage you to think about a few things in terms of advice, okay? It says in verse 17, in essence, as Jethro was watching Moses go through this process, this is the very words of Jethro, okay? So it says, Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing that you do is not good." Sometimes it's something that we need to be aware of from ourselves, but to be able to, appreciate even on that side of it, that, it does well to be straightforward with people, to be honest, to say Jethro looked and he didn't try to, coax him along and say, Moses, Moses, what you're doing is not good. It was straightforward, it was blunt, it was to the point, and he was just, and it wasn't coming from a bad place by any stretch of the imagination. Jethro and Moses, a lot of people kind of look at them as a mentor, a mentee relationship, and it's beautiful because that's Jethro looking at his son-in-law saying, "Bud, you're going to burn out. You're going to struggle. This is not going to last long before you're ready to pull your hair out, or, you just throw your hands up one day and say, I quit, whatever the case." But in this moment, in a loving and a compassionate way, Jethro just looks at Moses and says, "Buddy, the thing you're doing, it ain't good. It's not what you need to be doing right now." Sometimes, and that's part of the advice, is that people can come to us or, individuals, and they can say, "What are your thoughts?" And it's not going to do a whole lot of good to try to beat around the bush, so to speak, but to say, hey, if somebody's coming to and asking for our advice, it's one of those things that they're giving and opening the door for criticism. They're giving, the open door for critique or just an honest point of, perspective. And so it behooves us to stop and think, okay, what do I see in this situation? In essence, Jethro, he's looking at it, and he's saying, Moses, this ain't good, but it's going to begin to, even as we'll see here in a second, it's going to begin to hurt even your relationship with God. It's just literally you're going to, come to a place of where you're going to struggle more and more. And so, and even for that, not only if people are coming to us to get, or we're, giving advice to other people, I would encourage anybody else, if you're watching this, no matter which side of the coin it is, being able to take, positive criticism, constructive criticism. It's a very hard thing to do right now in our culture, in our age of the 21st century. Nobody wants to be, critiqued, or nobody wants to be criticized or anything else. But, even as the New Testament explains, everything that we do is supposed to be in love. But holistically, that's what Jethro is trying to convey to Moses, is to say, buddy, I love you, and I see the route and the path you're traveling, and it's not going to lead to a good place. And so that's what Jethro's advice is. That advice for the ages is, I need to be straightforward with you. I need to tell you what you're doing is not good. There's a point of accountability that comes into that. Jethro is trying to be accountable to Moses in a roundabout way and trying to, help him. But as well, Moses still has a responsibility within that. He's got to look and say, okay, it is depleting me. It is, causing me problems and stress and worry and anxiety and all these different things. And so Moses even has a responsibility into what he is listening to, the advice as to it relating to what Jethro is saying. But he goes on. And he says in verse 21, he says, moreover, this is Jethro talking again to Moses, not only giving him a straightforward way, but he begins to kind of problem solve with him, help him to figure out a navigating path as to how to take care of it. Don't just critique people. If there's anything that I've never appreciated or it's bothered me, don't say you do not like this and then just say, leave it at that. That bothers me to the core. But if you don't like something, if you can give me a reason why, I've got that doesn't bother me nearly as much. Thinking about that, this is Moses and Jethro saying, okay, with that side of it, here's the problem, but here's a solution out of it. Jethro begins to offer him more advice. He says, moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God. That is such an important factor within this. Jethro wasn't just saying, listen to anybody. Don't just delegate responsibilities to anybody. But there was even a criteria in Jethro's mind, or his mind, of saying there's a standard that's found within that. Sadly enough, we want to listen to advice from all kinds of people in this world. But we have to say, is it credible advice? Is it something that is going to bear fruit worthy of repentance, according to what, Matthew chapter 3, verse 8 tells us? Is it going to be something that produces godliness and holiness within our lives? Or is it advice that's going to jeopardize, damage, hurt our relationship with God, other people? All these things we have to take into consideration. And Jethro knows that this is a monumental task. With 2 million people, he knows that there's a lot at stake. But that's where he says, to be able to get these people, such as fear God, but he says, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s, and let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. So it will be easier for you when they will bear the burden with you. That's so good. That is so powerful. It's saying, is it possible, to delegate out? Yes. A lot of times we don't want to. Why? Because, let's be real, we are controlling people. We want to have, that control over everything. But this is Jethro saying, Moses, you cannot function like that. You may do it for a season. You may do it for a day or two. But eventually it's going to wear you out, and it's going to put your nose down to the ground and in the dirt. It's not going to go well. But this is Jethro saying, okay, Moses, you've got all these people. select godly men that can go out and they can take care of this group and that group and that group. So that way, whenever they come to you, in essence, you're only having to deal with top tier issues. You're not having to settle little disputes or, little things that are, in essence, hill's not worth dying on. He's saying that whenever they come to you, it is going to be something that saves your sanity, but as well, it is going to be things that really have a lot of play and a lot of effect into what is going on. And so sometimes within our own lives, we have to be willing to delegate, which means being able to trust that other people are able to do a job just as well as you or better, or, even if it's not as good, but knowing that it's taken care of. I can tell you as a pastor, it's hard, while I do not get the opportunity often, if I go and I sit in another church service or, we're on vacation and we go to church somewhere on vacation, it's one of those things like, it's hard to sit in the pew because as the preacher's preaching, my mind is saying, oh, well, he should have said this or he should have talked about this or, all these examples. And so sometimes that's the hard part about it is we say, well, other people are not going to do it like I do it. But that's the good thing, that they're not going to do it like you do it because we're not perfect. We don't have all of the answers. It's good because, some people, they're gifted in different ways and those gifts are going to come out in that very moment. And so that is a good thing to be able to delegate and say, I trust that even if it is good or whatever the case, that it is something that they're going to take care of and it'll be okay. That's the greatest thing about delegation is knowing that it'll be okay. But he goes on and he says in verse 23, and if you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure. That's the goal. That's the necessity. There again, this is Jethro not saying, how do we get you through a couple of weeks, but how do you get through a lifetime? Friend, the Christian life is not a sprint, but a marathon. It's not that it has to be done right now in this very moment, but he's saying, okay, if you begin to work at this, that is the goal. If you do this thing and God so commands you, if God allows you, if God, moves you in this direction, it's going to allow you to be able to endure. That's the very thing. Friend, you don't have to carry that burden, that weight all on your own. There are people, especially, that's what the church is called to be. It is a group of people, a body of people found in the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Christ that are willing to come alongside and help carry weight, to carry the burden, to ease the burden off of others' shoulders. But he says we will endure, but he says also, and all these people will also go to their place in peace. I don't know if you have kids or not, but, after a certain point, and not that I'm trying to equate the Israelites as being kids, but, decipher this as you will. But, after one kid comes up, well, this one's doing that. It's like, okay, you can fairly quickly settle it, right? Well, 30 seconds later, here comes the next kid. Well, now, Dad, this one did, and it's like, okay, guys, but you see what I'm getting at. That point of frustration, even though the issues are no different, how you handle the first point versus the last point is often vastly different. Imagine Moses. He gets up in the morning and he's trying to start out his day and he's good to go. He's smiling. And after about 5 or 6 people, he's like, okay, this day's got to end. Like, guys, what are we doing? There again, he's easing not only the burden off of himself, delegating it out, but then the people, they're not seeing those frustrations come directly from Moses. Or even hopefully the governors or the other people that, Moses set up over the people, over those thousands and hundreds and 50s and 10s and everything else. Everybody has a longer breath of being able to hold a point of longevity. And so thinking about that, I just want to encourage you and advice for the ages, what does it look like to heed the advice of Jethro, Moses' father-in-law? That maybe we're carrying too much weight. Maybe we're carrying too much of a burden, and we need to delegate those things out. Are we willing to trust those things? Are we willing to say that, okay, somebody else can take care of this? And even being able to say, what is it potentially that I'm doing that is not allowing God's kingdom to be fulfilled? In essence, Moses was carrying too much of the weight that problems and issues were still going to come as a result of it. For him to ease those things off of his plate meant more peace for the children of Israel. So, double-sided coin, simply to say that maybe you're carrying too much of a weight, too much of a burden, and maybe you're the one this evening that just simply needs to say, I've got to let some of these things go, because otherwise I don't have a peace, they don't have a peace, but to let it go means that peace can officially be found in all things. So just something to chew on, something to think on for your Wednesday evening. But I love y'all. I hope y'all have a great and wonderful evening. If you need anything, please let me know. But otherwise, I guess we'll hopefully see you Sunday morning. Thank you, guys.